The Phillies have a lot of their bullpen potentially locked down. So, how can they make an impact with a couple free agency moves? We'll talk about it on today's episode.
You are Locked On Phillies, your daily Philadelphia Phillies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, this is Locked On Phillies. I'm your host, Connor Thomas. Thank you so much for joining us today. We come to you as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Locked On Phillies is your number one place for daily, Monday through Friday, Philadelphia Phillies content. You might know me from some of my other work in the sports talk space. I've been on air over at 97.5 The Fanatic doing sports talk radio here in Philly for over 6 years. I've been a credentialed Philadelphia Phillies media member for the past 4 seasons, and this is now my 4th year as the host of Locked On Phillies. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. We're going to lead off today's episode talking about building the bullpen through free agency. If you want to see what I did with the rest of the roster, the starting rotation, and the position players, mainly the starters, you can go ahead and check out yesterday's episode where we broke that down. Didn't have time to get into the bullpen as well, so we're doing that to lead off today's episode. Later, we're going to get into our free agency breakdowns. There is a star outfielder that would fit really well in Philadelphia. Fills a major need. But is he likely going to be leaving where he played last year? I'll tell you who that is, and we'll evaluate that. And then what to watch for in the early days of free agency. With free agency opening up yesterday, what are the signs and moves that you should be looking for as free agency really gets rolling? And when will it? We already told you it could take a little bit for the Phillies if you trust history. But let's start with the bullpen wish list, because yesterday I went through a couple of names. And I've had people asking, what's your solution? You want this guy gone? You want that guy gone? You got to give us names of players to fill out this roster. Well, I did for the position players, and there are some very intriguing options with the bullpen. I mentioned in a previous episode, before free agency opened, but after the Phillies season ended, that with the current bullpen structure, there could be a lot of opportunity to move guys around. A guy like Jose Alvarado, who had a team option for $9 million. The Phillies could have chosen not to select that option. And if they didn't pick up the option, he would have become a free agent. Now we know that earlier this week, they did pick up that option for $9 million. So Jose Alvarado is locked down. There are still some guys that you could look at as potential trade candidates. Matt Strahm, he had his next year invested based on his performance this past year. So he is under contract for the 2026 season. But Dave Dombrowski made some weird comments because Matt Strahm made some weird comments about the Phillies not practicing PFPs, pitcher fielding practice, in the postseason. Dombrowski said in his year-end media availability, we practiced it, he just didn't, and kind of treated that situation a little bit weird. I don't know what that means. If Matt Strahm could potentially be moved, if there's tension there, it could have just been I disagree with his comments, but he's under contract and we trust him as a reliever. So we'll keep an eye on that. And then there is the intriguing case of Orion Kerkering, who is still a pre-arbitration player. So the Phillies are getting him on the super cheap. But the way the series against the Dodgers ended, there have been people that have thrown out, myself included, the idea that he won't be able to pitch in Philadelphia anymore. It's just not a situation that is beneficial for him or for the team. Because sure, if he goes out on opening day, 2026, and gets announced, people are going to give him a rousing ovation. And they should, because that series was not on Orion Kerkering. It was on the top of the lineup and the manager and the bullpen as a whole and so many other things. And to put it on one individual is not fair. But if he was to go out and say his first appearance of the year gives up 2 runs and gives up the lead, what do you think the reaction is going to be? People are going to lose it. They're going to be like, why did this guy come back? Because for Kerkering, it wasn't a great 2025. He allowed half of his inherited runners to score. He did not perform in the big moments. He did not look ready for the big moments. And this is a guy who's been up with the Major League club for a couple of years now. So you got to figure that the Phillies are questioning whether or not the best place for him is Philadelphia. Not the talent of the arm, but whether the setting is correct. You saw a guy in Sir Anthony Dominguez have significant success in Toronto and a little bit of success in Baltimore before that after the Phillies moved on from him. They didn't move on from him because they thought he stinks. They moved on from him because they thought his time in Philadelphia had come to an end. Maybe we're there with Orion Kerkering. But here are the players that are currently either under contract or under team control, which is under contract, but just not a free agency level contract or a team option or anything like that. Jhoan Duran, still under contract for the Philadelphia Phillies next year. Jose Alvarado, now under contract for the Phillies after they picked up the team option for $9 million. Matt Strahm, under contract because of the vested part of his contract that he got to this past year with his performance. Tanner Banks, pre-arbitration player. Orion Kerkering, pre-arbitration player. And I said in the starting rotation conversation yesterday, I would look at a pitcher like Chris Bassett, who's on the older side, who's got to be in the market for a one-year deal, being that he's in his late 30s, but has been durable, has been effective, and has also pitched out of the bullpen at points, which makes him valuable. So if the Phillies acquire Chris Bassett, like in my plan they would, then Taiwan Walker would not have a spot in the rotation. The rotation would be Christopher Sanchez, Jesus Luzardo, Aaron Nola, Andrew Painter, and the newly acquired Chris Bassett. So then Taiwan Walker, who is still under contract for one more year on his original deal he got when he first signed with Philadelphia, would then be part of your bullpen. And he would be the swing guy in the bullpen. You need a starter, he's your guy. You need a long reliever, he's your guy. So again, that's Duran, Alvarado, Strahm, Banks, Kerkering, and Walker that all could or should be bullpen arms and all are under team control or contract. So that leaves 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 2 more spots to get to the 8-man bullpen that your average Major League Baseball team carries. So what do? I'm going to work under the assumption at this point that Kerkering's staying, that Banks is staying, that Strahm is staying, that Walker's staying, and Alvarado and Duran we already know lockdown. So we're not going to go, oh, this potential trade for this guy, because really there's nothing performance-wise to say you would trade any of those players. It's more speculation based on the environment. And I don't know that that's enough for me to build an offseason plan around that from the outside looking in. But those 2 spots, there are 2 really intriguing names. The handedness is really important. Jhoan Duran's a righty. Orion Kerkering's a righty. Taiwan Walker's a righty. And then you have Alvarado, Strahm, and Banks, the lefties. Alvarado, a high-leverage guy. Strahm, a high-leverage guy. Tanner Banks this past year was used at points as a high-leverage guy. So lefties, you kind of have that covered. But your righty high-leverage guys are Jhoan Duran, who is your closer, which is a good thing that you have the guy, but it doesn't mean like you have a high-leverage spot in the 7th, you're not going to throw Duran. So it restricts him to pretty much just the 9th inning. Taiwan Walker, not going to be a high-leverage guy out of the bullpen. He's your long relief guy and a swingman. So you're not going to be seeing him get the 8th inning or the 7th inning if he's throwing out of the Phillies bullpen this year. And Orion Kerkering was not good in pressure spots this past year. So I don't consider him anymore a high-leverage arm for this bullpen. He's a 5th or 6th inning guy when they need him. And we'll see if he can right the ship of what was a promising career if he is still here next year. So you're going to need a high-leverage righty. And there's a perfect guy out there for so many reasons. The 7th member of the Philadelphia Phillies bullpen and their first free agency acquisition that I would like to see would be the righty Tyler Rogers. If you've watched any baseball, you know Tyler Rogers. The weird submarine arm slot, he is a righty. He is high leverage. He is lights out. And the salary projection is not bad. He's projected to get a 3-year deal at $27 million. Just a general projection by some insiders on contract stuff. That would be $9 million per year. Exactly what Jose Alvarado is earning this next year. I also like the idea of Rogers, who's 30, getting a 3-year contract because you're not going to become washed in between that time. And he doesn't throw all that hard. He just throws weird and funky. This works because, one, he is a lights out, high leverage right-handed reliever. But two, the Phillies have never been able to hit him. So get him on your team so you don't have to hit him anymore. I feel like everywhere he goes, he just shuts down the Phillies. But he kind of does that to every team. He wouldn't be overly expensive. You could give him a multi-year deal and feel fine about a long-term bullpen option. And he'd be a guy that fills the need of a righty high leverage arm. And then you just need another lefty to kind of fill in the gap. So who is a guy that would work? The name that I've got here is Hoby Milner. He doesn't throw very hard. And people might look at that and say, wow, another lefty. Banks is not a flamethrower. Strahm's not a flamethrower. We know Alvarado is. Do you really want to go with another slow lefty? The answer is yes, for two reasons. One, he's old and cheap. He made $2.5 million on a one-year deal last year with the Texas Rangers, so you wouldn't have to break the bank to get him in here. Two, he throws from a really weird arm slot. He throws like not Tyler Rogers weird, but he's almost clean sidearm. Sometimes you hear sidearm and it's like this almost three-quarter slide or like dropped a little below three-quarters where it just comes from a weird angle. Think Matt Strahm and the visual you see when he pitches. Milner's even lower than that. He's just kind of one of these weird switch-up guys that's had success for a long time at the major league level by missing bats and throwing from an arm angle you don't expect. I think he'd be a really big compliment to this bullpen. And he'd be a cheap one-year deal, so if he doesn't work out, you're not going too deep down the rabbit hole of paying a guy that's not going to be able to cut it. So that's what I would do. Duran, Alvarado, Strahm, Banks, Kerkering, Walker, and then add Tyler Rogers, which would be the biggest pitching acquisition for the Phillies this offseason, and add Hoby Milner to balance out. Then you've got 4 righties, 4 lefties, and all different types of arm slots and styles coming at you out of the bullpen. That would be a damn solid bullpen for the Philadelphia Phillies, if I do say so myself. But let me know in the comments if you agree with those two names, or if you'd like to see any of the guys that are under contract be moved and don't want them in the bullpen, like a Kerkering, like a Strahm. For whatever reason, you can let me know in the comments on the YouTube feed. Coming up next, we're going to take a look at another free agent breakdown. Could the Phillies go get a star outfielder? Yeah. I mean, they've got the need for it, but do they have the ability to steal him away from where he played last year? We talk Cody Bellinger as we continue today's episode. Let's talk about FanDuel first, though, because the NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. And FanDuel's great for those games where it's just like, I want to watch it, but I don't really have a rooting interest, or maybe it's not that interesting of a game at face value. The Sixers earlier this week, they lost by 11 in Cleveland on the back end of a back-to-back. They were gassed. It was never going to be a good game. But I took the Sixers plus 11.5 on FanDuel, so it was tight for me right to the final whistle. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push or maybe just trying for that late cover. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. I'd love for you, as we dive deeper into our offseason content, to become one of our everydayers and checks out Locked On Phillies day in and day out. Like I told you, we're putting out daily content on what you need to know about the Phillies offseason. And you can follow us on YouTube or in podcast form. If you want to watch the show, we are available on YouTube, and make sure that you hit that subscribe button. It's free and easy to subscribe, but you'll get notifications when new episodes are posted. It'll be part of your algorithm. That way you won't miss any of our great content here on Locked On Phillies. And if you can't watch, you can listen. We're available wherever you get your podcasts. And I would love it if you could rate and review if you like listening to Locked On Phillies rather than watching. Let's talk about our next free agent spotlight, which is going to be a former New York Yankee. You might know him from a couple other places. His name, you know it already, it's Cody Bellinger. And Cody Bellinger is going to be a very interesting free agent to keep an eye on this year. He was with the Yankees this past season. And he had a really good year with New York. Not an MVP caliber year like we've seen from him at past stops in his career, but he's still, at the age of 30, a viable outfielder from a lot of different ways to look at it. He's a really good defensive player, and he can play all three outfield spots. So if you want to put him in left, you can put him in left. If you want to put him in right, you can put him in right. Or if maybe the Phillies say, hey, we want to take a big swing at center field, and Harrison Bader isn't going to cut it for us, they can go out and get him to play center. He's also played some first base, so he could move around and play a corner infield spot if you need him to. Versatile defender. And he was darn good this past year. 29 home runs, slash 272, 334, 480. Now, he was much better at Yankee Stadium because of that short porch, and that does play into it. But he's a guy with a pedigree that has won individually with yearly awards, and he's also a great defender and good bat. Like, you can get everything you need out of Cody Bellinger. He's kind of the do-it-all player. The problem is twofold, and we'll get to that. But the the fit for Cody Bellinger is high for the Philadelphia Phillies. Pretty much if you play center field and you can remotely hold your own, you're going to be a great fit for the Phillies because they need a center fielder. And that's where I think Bellinger would play if he came here to Philadelphia. Then your outfield wouldn't be completely lost if you had Justin Crawford in left and either Miguel Andujar, who we talked about earlier as a potential target in a previous episode, or Brandon Martian right. Then Bellinger in center. That's a good defensive outfield. And he can hit. So that's great. So the fit's great. The cost is also going to be great. And by great, I mean high, costly. You're not getting a deal on Cody Bellinger. And the reason why feeds into the realistic chance, which is the third thing that we evaluate with all of our free agents. So if the cost is high and the fit is high, the Phillies may be willing to make that gamble. Hey, we'll give you the projections based on this Athletic article that I'm referencing here, somewhere around, 6 years and $150 million, right? Or you could go with a shorter term deal, maybe like a 3 years and $70 million, something around that range. But either way, it's a multi-year contract. And the other fish in the pond are why this is going to get expensive. Because there is some belief that he wants to stay in New York. He had an option. He opted out. He's trying to get a bigger deal with somebody, and that somebody very well could be the New York Yankees. And they liked him this past year. Even though they didn't have the team success they wanted, he was a bright spot for that New York Yankees lineup. And if you know anything about the Yankees, even though the Dodgers have kind of taken over, where the early 2000s Yankees were the evil empire that just outbid everybody for everyone and just built these super teams, the Yankees still have some of that in their DNA. They're never going to trot out a low payroll lineup. And if Cody Bellinger wants more money, well, they may say, hey, you earned it with what you did this past year. So you have to go out and not only meet the asking price that Cody Bellinger is going to be going to the Yankees with, but then you have to convince him, whether it's more money or a strong sales pitch, that he's better off in Philadelphia where he's never played. He's comfortable in New York. And there is something about comfortability when it comes to free agency. It's going to be an argument for a lot of these big name free agents. So that's why the realistic chance that Cody Bellinger becomes a Philly to me is low. Because I think he ends up in pinstripes again, and the navy blue ones, not the red ones here that we have in Philadelphia. I just don't see the Phillies going out and getting into a bidding war with the Yankees when they have their own irons in the fire with guys like Kyle Schwarber and JT Realmuto. And Harrison Bader is a cheaper option that, again, we talked about familiarity with Cody Bellinger. The Phillies have familiarity, if only for a couple of months. But what a fling it was with Harrison Bader. So an intriguing option, though. What do you say we take a look deeper into that if, God forbid Kyle Schwarber goes somewhere else, or you go the cheap option at catcher and a multi-year deal for JT Realmuto falls through, or Harrison Bader's not available, and then all of a sudden you're saying, we missed some targets, we might have to take a big swing here. Cody Bellinger could be that guy, but it's a lot of dominoes that have to fall in order for it to happen, so I do not see it as a realistic chance that the Phillies end up with Cody Bellinger, though he would be such a perfect fit, and I would love to see him play in Philadelphia. Coming up next, we're going to talk about what to watch for in the early days of free agency. What are the positions that usually get signed early? What is the flow of the general Major League Baseball free agency period? Not just the Phillies, but it's important to see how other teams are going to be attacking stuff, or how the league as a whole normally attacks free agency, to know what you need to prioritize. We're going to talk about that as we continue today's episode. Let's talk about Prize Picks first, though, because you and I make decisions every day. But on Prize Picks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement of this sports season. Whether you're following the NFL or the NBA or both, there's no better time to jump in on the action. If you haven't tried it yet, Prize Picks is the simplest way to play. You just pick more or less on at least 2 player stats. And if you get them right, you're going to win. It takes less than 60 seconds to make your lineup. And you can play anywhere Prize Picks operates, including California, Texas, and Georgia. I've been using Prize Picks during both football Sundays and the NBA starts of the season, because the Sixers are really exciting and the Birds are on a roll. And they both have great players. Tyrese Maxey is leading the NBA in minutes played. You know what that means? He's been putting up crazy numbers. So look at more on Tyrese Maxey's points and assists. Maybe you want to look at Jalen Hurts and more on his passing yards and even rushing yards against Green Bay in Lambeau on Monday night. There's a lot of great ways to do it. And if you want to use multiple of the player stats, the new Stacks feature is a game changer. You can now put more on, like I said, something like Tyrese Maxey's points and assists and put it in the same lineup. Plus, if one of your players leaves early with an injury, the injury reboot saves your lineup from a loss. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONMLB for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. Let's talk a little flow of free agency. And then we have a couple segments that I want to mention to you as well that we're going to be bringing back this offseason, that if you've followed Locked On Phillies for the past couple of years, you're probably familiar with. But if you're a new listener or viewer, you might not know about. It's a fun couple of ways to interact with you, the listener, which we've already started to do in a couple episodes this offseason. But the flow of the Major League Baseball offseason. I said in a previous episode this week that the Phillies may look to take care of Kyle Schwarber first, so that you know, hey, here's our big piece of spending. How do we fill in the gaps? Let's say you bring in another guy first, like a Harrison Bader, for example, and he wants, I don't know, an extra $1 or $2 million than what you budgeted for. And then Kyle Schwarber decides, hey, these other guys are offering me more, and now I want more, and you've already gotten yourself into a little bit of a sticky situation with payroll because you paid somebody. The price went up where you didn't expect it on the guy you really wanted to get back. And the next thing you know, you're up against your financial limit. Now, there is no salary cap, but everybody goes into the offseason with a plan of how much they want to spend. The Phillies, if they take care of Kyle Schwarber first, then know much better what their financial limitations are to fill out these smaller spots in the roster. Take care of the big thing first, let the small pieces fall around it. That would be my specific strategy for the Philadelphia Phillies, but that is not how Major League Baseball operates. In free agency, you have seen year after year after year, the big name guys take forever to sign. You'll see some bullpen arms here, a starter there, a corner outfielder or a mid-level infielder go off the board in the next couple of weeks. The one-year deals, hey, you know what your market is. We know what your market is. Why don't we make a deal? You'll also see a lot of return contracts, because when the familiarity, which might be the word of today's episode, exists between a team and a player, sometimes you just get out there and you're like, man, I don't really feel like looking for a new team. It's like dating when you've been in a relationship for a while. You go out and you're like, this kind of sucks. You go on one bad date, 2 bad dates, and then the next thing you know, you're calling your ex again saying, hey, grass ain't always greener. Why don't we get back together? 1-year deal? Sounds great. No, I wouldn't try and start a relationship under that premise, but a baseball contract, absolutely. So you're going to see some of the smaller name guys come off the board first. And that's going to be because, well, you can't just sit around and not build your roster waiting for these big name guys. There is a danger to that. Let's say you want to wait for the guy we talked about, Cody Bellinger. And for that reason, you let Harrison Bader sign with another team. And then all of a sudden, another center fielder signs with another team and another. And you say, well, we really want Cody Bellinger. He's like, yeah, let me think about it. And then in January or February, he goes, yeah, sorry, boys. I'm going back to the Yankees. You know what happens now? You're the last person at the ball, and you don't have somebody to dance with in center field. So you have to make sure that you don't get caught waiting for these big name free agents. And then by the time they sign, there's nothing left. And you're scraping the bottom of the barrel. So that's why it operates the opposite of how I want the Phillies to operate. The reason why I feel so comfortable in saying go get Kyle Schwarber first is because I do really believe he wants to be here. I do really believe the Phillies want him to be here. And I do think John Middleton is going to say basically near blank check, Dave Dombrowski, go get this job done. I think it's very, very likely Schwarber's back. We've heard that from insiders throughout the regular season, and now that the season has ended, that still seems to be the focus. There is clear, to keep with the romantic theme, you ever seen those two people that aren't dating, but that they're going to end up dating? Maybe they're part of the friend group, and they keep telling you they don't like each other, but you can see it. That's what Kyle Schwarber and the Phillies are. Whether you like it or not, and whether you want them to move on from him or not to maybe reset this whole thing, that's the vibe that I'm getting of the situation. So I feel much more comfortable with you putting the eggs into the Kyle Schwarber basket than, say, trying to steal Cody Bellinger from the Yankees in the open market where they could just bid you up like crazy. So that's the flow of the Major League Baseball offseason. Again, you can expect some deals to come down pretty quickly here, but they won't be the notable ones. The notable ones push off because if you're a big name player, you want to give yourself as much time to figure out the market as possible. You get a $100 million offer from the Yankees, and then the Phillies give you a $110 million offer. And then your agent calls the Dodgers and says, hey, 115, come on. And 115, okay. The longer an item stands at auction, the more expensive it's going to get. The longer a player is available in free agency and chooses not to sign a deal, in theory, if they're a valuable player, the more expensive they're going to get. And that means more money in their pocket and their agent's pocket, and that's why they draw everything out. And they also want to see the market settle first. Hey, let's say Harrison Bader gets $100 million. He won't. But then Cody Bellinger goes, well, I'm worth $3 million. And I'm glad I waited to sign until after he signed. These are the dynamics of how free agency works in every sport. And it gets accentuated more in baseball because there is no salary cap. You can't just have a team reach out to you and say, well, we're up against the cap. Here's how much we can give you. You can always fire back with, yo, there's no cap. If you think I'm good, go into the luxury tax. Let's roll. You want me to play for your team? It's going to cost you. So that's where all of that is at. So it'll be intriguing to watch. That's my breakdown. We've gone through the wish list, and now we continue with our free agent evaluations as we move forward into the free agency period. But we're going to add some new segments as we are now into the free agency period of the offseason. Previously, we've done these, and I want to bring them back. Monday is going to be Mailbag Monday. So on X or Twitter, whatever you'd like to call it, you can follow the Locked On Phillies account at LO_Phillies. Or if you follow me at Connor Thomas 975, I'll always retweet these tweets. I'm going to put out a tweet saying, reply with your Mailbag Monday questions. And you can ask me anything about the Philadelphia Phillies in there. And on Monday, we're going to devote an entire segment to run through those questions. We're going to also do something called Off the Pole. It's a fun little play on the foul pole in baseball. But what it is I'm going to put out a Twitter poll, and you have your chance to respond, and I'll react to the responses. So your chance for your vote to be heard, or if you want to have a little bit more of a detailed conversation, join in on Mailbag Monday. Those will be two new segments that we bring back next week. So look for the tweet later today. If you're listening on Friday, it'll be out by the end of the day Friday, asking you for Mailbag Monday questions, and I would love for you to participate. Sometimes we'll do YouTube comments as well. I'll let you know when we're going to do that. But I want to get you more involved now that we don't have games and stuff to react to. And there are some cold, slow days in the middle of the baseball offseason where it'll be fun to chat. That's all for today's episode of Locked On Phillies. Thank you so much for joining us. Once again, we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Please make sure you're rating, reviewing, subscribing to the YouTube, all that stuff that we talked about. And I will talk to you a special Saturday episode because there's something we got to get into about Bryce Harper and his spot in the lineup. I'll talk to you tomorrow on the next episode of Locked On Phillies.